Great. Well, I tell you what a privilege it is to be here today. I'm Pastor Steve, but not Pastor Steve, right? I had someone at the first service come up to me, and I think he's new. He just said, "So you're leaving and another Steve is coming?" I'm like, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm never here. I'm visiting." So I am the pastor, Steve, as a visitor. I tell you, I'm so excited for the things ahead for this church as Steve comes this week and begins a new chapter in the life of this congregation. It's just been wonderful to be associated with you for as long as I have and to see how God will unfold a future before you, that you continue to be a blessing to the community and the world around you. It's wonderful to be here today. I really am more of a participatory preacher. I'm actually not, and I thought about it, I'm actually not used to standing on a podium and being this far back. I kind of like to be right up in your face, but I'm going to kind of observe the tradition here. But I want to ask a participatory question. First off, can you all raise your hand? Okay, see, I know you can. So when I ask these questions, just raise your hand in response. Do you believe that the church should be a place where people should strive to be honest? If you agree with that, just raise your hand, okay? Now, hands down, if you disagree with that, raise your hand. No? You know, I was actually open to the possibility that someone might raise their hand, being honest and saying like, nah, I don't know that I want to be totally honest. Okay, so this next question is really the question. Would you rather this morning now barring any limitations you might have, but would you rather take a long walk or listen to a long sermon? Okay? Now, how many are you up for the long walk? How many would like the long walk? Okay, and how many would you like to listen to a long sermon? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, yeah, all right. Okay, I'm going to bring the long sermon today because 6 of you wanted it. No. Actually, I'm going to do my best to bring a good sermon. That's all I can promise. But I want you to do the long walk as homework. And I hope by the end of the message you'll understand where I'm going with that. This post-Easter series has focused on resurrection stories of Jesus, stories that help us to see that Jesus is alive in the world, stories that help us to pay attention to the new life that is unfolding, to the way that Jesus is moving in the world today. Sometimes I hear on the radio a song that takes me back in time, but it takes me also to another place. It's a Willie Nelson song, and the lyrics are "On the road again. I just can't wait to get on the road again, because the life I love is making music with my friends, and I can't wait to get on the road again." Whenever I hear that song, I always think, man, why in the world did I stop playing banjo when I was in junior high school? Like, I should have stuck with it. Because there's something about that sense of the life of a musician, to be able to travel, to see the wonders of the world, to be able to travel and to discover more about yourself in the travels. One of the most famous road trip movies of all times is more than 75 years old. But in this movie, you won't find a car, but rather you find an odd combination of travelers who are told to follow the yellow brick road. In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy meets with a group of friends who are on the way, and each are in search of something that is missing in their lives, something that they need. And what they discover at the end of the journey is that they had what they needed all along. And yet, the road trip was essential. We need road trips. We need to take travels. We need to move out from where we are. In the text that we're looking at today, it's from Luke chapter 24, and in the verses prior, we have heard the news of Jesus' resurrection, but Jesus is yet to appear. And so Luke invites us to take a long walk. Luke invites us to a road trip because there we will find Jesus. Or rather, it is there that we will be found by Jesus. And so let us pray. Lord Jesus, we ask that you would open our eyes that we might see you. Open our hearts to your will and your word for us. Use our hands to do the work of your kingdom. and bless our feet as we go. Amen. From Luke chapter 24, beginning at verse 13. Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you are walking along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all of this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some of the women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then Jesus said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted them, the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead of them as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord. Amen. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands with this next question, but are you seeking Jesus? Are you seeking Jesus? And when I say seeking Jesus, I don't mean kind of a religious devotion or more churchy stuff. But I mean, are you seeking the living Christ, the one who is alive, the one who doesn't just ask us to believe in him, but rather invites us to follow him? Are you seeking Jesus? And if you're seeking Jesus, the question that I would have is, where exactly are you looking? Because sometimes we get into a mind and a mode that we think that the place to look is a place like this, right? I mean, this is where you come to seek Jesus. This is where you come to see what Jesus is doing. I mean, this is his house. But what I want to encourage you to do today is to not think so much in terms of what's inside, but rather what's outside. Because it's Jesus that invites us on this road trip, so that on the road trip and all the places that we go, that we might see Jesus alive. You see, a lot of Christians have this idea that on that first Easter, Jesus appeared and everybody believed, and it was awesome and glorious. But if you read the accounts, if you read the stories as they appear in the Gospels, that isn't really the case. In each one of the gospel stories, there is this sense of doubt, confusion, misunderstanding, and downright disbelief that is woven within the story. Luke's telling of it unfolds this awesome event on the 3rd day. There's the crucifixion, and then all of this happens. The women hear the news. They come back and are faithful preachers to tell the story. They instruct the others. But then the 2 of these disciples, having heard all of that, they walk away. And isn't that somewhat surprising? I mean, don't you hear as they go through the whole thing, you're just like, are you kidding? And you left? You walked away? You got to this point and you said, I think we got to get to work. We better go. I mean, you'd want to hang out, at least to the end of the day. It's the third day. But they don't. They leave. They walk away, and this is the amazing thing to me, Jesus walks with them. You see, resurrection power is for the defeated. Broken people go on road trips. That's what road trips are for. Jesus walks with us in all the ups and the downs of our life. 12 years ago, I was called to start a new Presbyterian church in Ladera Ranch. And I imagined that it would be after we got a little bit of momentum, which we did. And I thought it would be more like, settling down and putting down roots, establishing a firm foundation. But in fact, the last 2 years that we've been together have been more like a road trip. As we approached the 10-year mark, it became clear to us that the project we were working on just wasn't going to be sustainable. We were sent to Ladera Ranch to do something different, but somehow we fell into kind of the predictable patterns of what we all expect from church. And it wasn't getting us any farther. And by and large, the community wasn't saying, yes, we need this. And so we had to step back and say, how is it that we could reconceive of our mission? We're Village Presbyterian Church meeting in a school, but we have no land and no building and no prospect for that in the immediate future. So we began to rethink of ourselves and think of ourselves rather than Village Presbyterian Church, because if you're going to a Presbyterian church, you kind of expect something like this, don't you? So we started thinking, what if instead of that, we thought of ourselves as common villages? What if it's not so much about getting all the people to one place at an hour on a Sunday morning, but rather it's a way of organizing and being in our community to embody the presence of Christ in all kinds of places. We could be common villages, common people developing an uncommon trust in Jesus for the common good, for everyone. Jesus said something about that, about you're the salt of the earth, the light of the world. What if we focused on being that in our community? And so we went through a radical reformation. We decided to put these changes into place. We moved from our Sunday morning at a local middle school to Sunday afternoons at Presbyterian Church of the Master. We moved to the afternoon slot because we thought, we'll just find a way to invite people into that. And so if you ask me today, where do I see the resurrection of power of Jesus? I see it in the faces of those who are committed to common villages, who are daring to do something different in order to follow Jesus and to invite other people along the way. After several months on Sunday afternoons, it soon became clear that we needed to make a change again, and a different venue opened in our community. But here's the thing. We went from this change to this change, and then we moved it here. This is what I found out. No one likes change. Isn't that true? It might be true here. I don't know. It's true over there. No one likes change. See, when we have these hopes and dreams, this is what the church, I think, should become, and then those don't really work out like we think. Sometimes you walk away and you say, it didn't work out like I thought. And we had to face that as a church, that some people just walked away. But some people hung in there. And this is what I believe. I believe that Jesus walks with us. I also believe that Jesus walks with any who walk away. But the potential of what we could do. But returning to the story of the travelers on the road to Emmaus, Jesus walks with them, but they fail to recognize him. And unless we get too hard on these, how often in our lives have we failed to recognize the presence of Jesus? That Jesus is actually traveling with us. But look at what he does on the journey. He asks them questions, and it's almost as if he's eliciting. He wants to hear exactly where they stand. What's the unique story that they bring? And what's amazing about it is that Luke gives this major section to where they kind of unfold all of their woes with all of their emotions and all of their feelings connected to it. right? And we read that and we go, wow, they were really in a tough spot. And then later, he says, and then Jesus interpreted them, the scriptures. And aren't you the kind of person that goes, man, why didn't he tell us more about that? Like, I'd rather hear more about that than their woes. Well, actually, Luke did tell a lot about that in the first 23 chapters. So read through those. But he gives a lot of space to their woes. And it makes me wonder in our own lives that I believe we do begin to get closer to Jesus as we get in touch with the longings and the desires and the disappointments that are on our hearts. It's so easy for us as Christians to have the places where we have a circle of friends or a small group or a Bible study where we can go and be honest with them and honest with ourselves. But last fall, I started thinking about what if you don't have that? I mean, what if you're not a part of a church? Where exactly do people go when they're in trouble? Do they have to come through these doors to get help? Or what if, like Common Villages, we thought about how do we get out to them, to meet them where they are? And that's when someone sent me a link to a church in Texas that was doing something kind of different. And I thought, well, of course, it's a church in Texas. I mean, they do that kind of stuff. But it was something called drive-through prayer. I'm thinking, drive-through prayer, what's that about? And as all it is you can see the pictures, you make some signs and you sit out there and you wait for people to drive. It's not drive-by prayer because you can't pray that fast. But it's drive-through prayer. You just create some space and you invite people to come and receive prayer. I don't have church property, so I picked a nice little spot in our community with the park where you could come off one of the main highways and come in and just get prayer. And actually, I sat there and I thought about this for a couple weeks, and I thought, do I dare do that? I mean, I worried about being one of those kind of, religious fanatics out there. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Do I want to do it? Do I feel it? Will I have the courage to do that? Will anybody stop? I was telling my family about it around the table one night. My middle school daughter, she goes, Dad, that is the weirdest thing I have ever heard. And I thought, you know what? You're right. Like, I agree with you. But I made signs, and I parked my car. I opened the back. I put a little table there, a couple of chairs. And I thought, is anyone going to stop? Within 20 minutes, someone stopped. That was the first one. I've been out there, not every week, but pretty regularly on Fridays, 20-something times. Every time there's at least one. I've had as many as 8. One time it was fun. I had this lineup. I'm like, you'll have to wait. I'm praying for this one. But it's like amazing. And what amazes me is how people will come and they open their heart and they tell their story, and a parking lot becomes sacred ground. One man came, and as he pulled in, he looked at me and he goes, oh, it's you. And I was like, yeah, it's me. He's a neighbor that lives a few blocks away. Then he starts telling me his story about his son who's battling depression. And by the time we finished praying, he had tears running down his face, but he had to hurry and make a U-turn and get out of there. A couple weeks later, he stopped again. We kept praying for his son. And this time as he finished up, again, blotting away the tears, he said, you have no idea how much this means to me. And I thought, yes, I do. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Can we be in a place where rather than thinking they're going to all come to us, that we find creative ways to go to them? There was another woman, we were chit-chatting, kind of light conversation. And I said, do you need prayer? Is there something I can pray for? And she said, yeah, I really need to stop drinking. I drink too much, and I'm missing my kids. And I thought, well, okay, let's talk about that and pray about it. She's come pretty regularly, and we've prayed together. She got involved in an AA group. The last time I saw her, she was doing a lot better. I thought, yes, that's awesome. Where do I see Jesus? I see Jesus in those kind of places. I see Jesus out there. Jesus moving in the world. There's something in this story that to me is so playful that Jesus would be pretending to move along, right? I'm going to just, I got to keep going. And they're like, no, stay. And as he stays, they invite him to the table, the stranger to the table. And what they get blown away at is that the stranger of the table becomes the one they recognize as Jesus in the very way that he breaks bread. And their eyes were open. They become awake, alive to a different reality. Talked about the transition we've been in as a church. I do have a rather amazing story about how we found the location we're currently in right now. And I'm like, this would be great. We can go from this church place to this different place that is actually more in line with the area we've been sent to. It's on Ortega Highway, and it's a small little park called Briata Park and Event Center. Now, I love San Clemente Presbyterian Church. Your view from the patio is awesome, but let me tell you, our view from our sanctuary is better. We're outside. We meet outside because we live in a community of people who are used to going outside. That's just the way it is, right? Nobody ever says, I don't know if my kid can play soccer, because it's outside. Right? Nobody says, baseball? Ooh, I don't know. That's outside. Why is it that the majority of the ministry that Jesus did took place outside, and we say, you got to go inside for church, though? I mean, isn't it time to try something a little different, to get outside and to see what God can do? And so here's my challenge for you. My challenge is that you begin to move outside as well. You want to see Jesus? If you want to see Jesus, then you're going to need to go outside. I want to invite you to take a long walk, to look at the people around you, to listen to the sorrow, to watch for the joy, to ponder the scriptures, to pour out your heart, to invite the stranger to stay for a meal, and become convinced of this, that God's love is far wider, far higher, far deeper, far longer than we could ever imagine, and that Jesus invites us into the world outside to bear witness to God's love. I want to close with these words from Wendell Berry, who said, "As I have read the Gospels over the years, the belief has grown in me that Christ did not come to found an organized religion, but came instead to found an unorganized one. He seems to have come to carry religion out of the temples into the fields and sheep pastures, onto the roadsides and banks of the rivers, into the houses of sinners and publicans, into the towns and the wilderness, toward the membership of all that is here." Friends, Jesus is alive today, and we get to go outside and see him. Let's pray together.